It's easy to get disillusioned with ordinary life, but what if there's more to it than meets the eye?
Everyday, ordinary life is where extraordinary faith is built. It's where we actually get to walk with Jesus.
This podcast is all about looking at all of life, the highs, the lows, and plateaus through the lens of a journey with Jesus.
Whoever you are, wherever you're at, God sees you and wants to walk with you.
Only when you choose to do life with Him does the ordinary become wonderful. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome back to Wonderfully Ordinary. I'm your host, Sammy.
And I'm your co-host, Stesha.
And we're so excited for part two
of
our testimonies. So last week I got to share mine, and this week we're going to hear from Stesha and just hear about what God has done in her life.
Yes, I'm so excited to share. And if you guys haven't listened to Sammy's, then I highly recommend that after this you go and listen to Sammy's testimony, because it's really sweet and powerful.
Yeah, and just we're not going to do High Low Buffalo because we're recording this in the same day.
Sorry, I know you guys are all sad because it's truly probably your favorite part of the episode.
Yeah, but honestly.
it's hard to think of new ones because we are filming this in the same day. So,
but I will give a quick intro to why we're sharing testimonies. One, we want you guys to get to know us better. Mm-hmm. But two, we also both thought that our stories initially were just basic, boring, and not really a testimony. But then we both, in our own way, found that God writes everyone's stories, which means that they're never going to be boring. And what God does in one person's life is going to encourage someone else. And so that's why we're sharing our stories, is because they are wonderfully ordinary. And they're wonderful because God is the one who brought us through all the things we've gone through. So
amen to that.
So let's start off, Stesha, with...
Well, as Sammy said, I am Stesha. And my life starts with being born.
Yes, like mine, just like mine.
So if you're confused, make sure you watch Sammy's episode. But no. So yeah, alongside of being born, I was born into a Christian family. So just like babies, a lot of you probably have a similar life story that you were born to believers, which is really awesome. But with that comes a lot of different I feel like things that you go through that maybe someone who is not born to a believing family might not go through. Mm-hmm. And as much as how sweet it was, and really, I'm really grateful that I was born to a family of believers, just because I really did get to avoid some things in my life that some like trials and hardships that other people do have to go through, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. But just because my family was believing in Jesus and stuff, that does not mean that I did not have trials in my life, because I think that's one misconception that people have, and maybe you have this misconception, is that you think, oh, just because I'm believing in Jesus and walking with him, my life is going to be all daisies and rose petals and sunshine. Yeah. And though there are moments like that, and it might feel like that overall, there are definitely hard trials, and maybe your whole life is filled with trials, but it's Jesus the one who brings joy to our life. Mm-hmm. So I think that's just something we got to remember, that it is not like a smooth sailing ship, because Jesus's life was not like that. Yeah. And so I don't think it's fair for us to expect our life to be like that either. Yeah. Growing up, I did not feel seen. And sometimes you go to school and it's just like, inevitable, like kids are kids and whatever. But I truly felt unseen, and maybe that was a little bit due to myself, just because I was a shy kid and I didn't like put myself into situations. I would wait to be approached by kids, and once like, people came up to me, I can like chat with them and whatnot, but I never wanted to put myself like first or forward.
Yeah. Which I think is, like you said, sometimes it can be part of your personality, just like being more shy, but then sometimes too, it really is because people aren't welcoming or making you feel welcomed.
And I don't know if necessarily it was always that kids were making me feel welcomed, which there were probably times like that, but a lot of it I think stemmed from even like my background. So if you guys don't know, which I don't know if I've shared this yet, but I am a child to immigrants. So my parents immigrated from Russia in the late 90s separately. Then they got married in the US, which is kind of funny. Like they met here, but they both came from Russia. So I grew up with almost two identities, I would say. I had my identity of being American, it's a so-called American at school, because I went to public school my whole life. And then I had my Russian identity at home and at church, because I also went to a Russian speaking church as well. So I kind of felt like I have two sides. So when I'm at home and at church, I am my truest self, if you will, because I can kind of incorporate everything. And then when I'm at school, I kind of have to push my Russian and all of these pressures of what being like a child to immigrants is, with just like different foods we eat and like different things we believe in and whatnot. So I had like these two identities in my head. And then on top of that, not only did I feel different in those two categories, I also then had my category of like, okay, I go to a public school. Half these kids, if not more, are not believers, or they're not from families of Christians. And then the other half who are Christian, like no one really talked about their faith in elementary school and middle school and stuff. It didn't really come up that much. Like, you know, you're just a kid, you're just friends with everyone. And so, but deep down, you still know you're different. Like kids used to be like, oh, you can't like say bad words in front of Stesha because she doesn't think like that. And which while I was like, I mean, say what you want. I don't know why you're apologizing to me. I was like, you should be apologizing to the Lord because you're offending him, not me. But it was always like this like stigma them like, oh, she's Christian, like she's different. And I guess says a lot that I must have been living my life semi differently, that they would automatically like kind of bring that up. So I had like these two worlds I was a part of, the secular world, the believing world, the American world, and my Russian side. So I just felt like very out of place. And another thing I used to struggle with, maybe even still to this day, was the fact that I was like, okay, so with my American friends and just culture and just living here in America, I don't feel American enough. And I don't know if Sammy, if you've ever felt this, because you do come from a Cuban background, there's just some things you're like, I don't know, I can't relate to that because I didn't grow up in an American household. But then on the other hand, I also can't say that I feel fully Russian because I grew up in America. So there are some things I'm like, oh, I don't understand that because I did go to American public school. I do live in the United States. So it's just all these identities running through my head.
It gets confusing.
It gets a little hard because you're like, you have to remember, okay, I'm this person here, I'm this person here. And then you start to almost like separate yourself, which I don't think is healthy. And you should not, I think you should be the same no matter where you are. And that also can easily happen when you grow up in a Christian household, is that at church, you're the Christian girl, and then at school, you're just kind of like everyone else. Not saying you're doing anything bad necessarily. It's just you kind of push Jesus in a closet. And you only remember him on Sundays. And so for a long time, that's kind of like the life I was living. Even though I watched my parents serve and do like ministry together, I would go to like church camps growing up and all this stuff. And I definitely very much believed and loved Jesus. But to me, that's what loving Jesus was just like going to church and doing stuff. I didn't realize it was more of a heart posture. So that kind of took me a second to figure out. But I would say, I guess if we kind of go down to the point where I think I accepted Christ into my life was probably when I was like 11 years old at like church or something, when they're like, oh, if you believe in Christ, like, or if you want to accept Jesus, like come down and like we'll like talk with you, we'll give you a Bible, whatever,
pray with you.
But because I was so shy and I just didn't want people to look at me, I didn't want to put myself forward like that, I stayed at my seat. But I did pray it in my head and whatever, and I didn't really tell anyone, but it kind of kept it to myself because I was like, I don't feel comfortable going anywhere. So that was my life for the longest time. Now we're in middle school, and the greatest website ever is popping off, YouTube. I love me some YouTube. And I don't know why, but I was obsessed with YouTube, and specifically like the OG like lifestyle YouTubers and like beauty gurus, if you will, and fashion influencers. So like the OG people from that time, I was just like in awe of, and I drew so much inspiration, and I just wanted to be just like them. And so one day I decided I wanted to start a YouTube channel, which I think is bizarre because if you're looking at me, this girl who's seemingly shy, she doesn't want like extra eyes on her. She doesn't want people to like look at her an extra time. Also feels like not really accepted. People might like not like her. Why in the world would I want to go on YouTube? Tell me that, please, because I I don't understand. But I was like, I don't care. I'm going to post a YouTube video.
Yeah.
So
do you feel like it was almost a way for you to be seen, that it was less, I don't know, you were attracted to it because you could kind of try and explore your personality, be yourself and stuff, but it wasn't in front of people, it was in front of a camera?
I think that's exactly what it was. I don't think in the moment I realized this.
Yeah, yeah.
But looking back, 100%. I
Okay.
think that I was too scared or shy or whatever, or I didn't feel invited enough to be myself in person. I mean, obviously I had my friends and whatnot where I could be like that, but this was like my escape where I could be creative. I can do what I want and post videos. And I don't know if I just assumed no one I knew would watch them, or I was like out of sight, out of mind. If I don't see you watching it, I frankly don't care if you do. You could watch my video 100 times and I'd be like, great, I get the views. So I was like, I don't know. I just went for it.
Yeah.
And so I took my little iPod Touch, you know, those things from back in the day, and I would like set it up at my window and I would just start recording, and it's some of the cringiest videos ever. By the way, I have since privated them, so don't even try looking for them.
Don't try.
You can try and you won't find them. But it was really sweet, and I would just make like fun little like, what's in my purse? What's in my backpack? Back to school hacks, like
That's
stuff
so
like
cute.
that.
What the heck?
It was so much fun. I'll have to show you, Sammy,
Yes,
one of these days. You get to see inside the vault. But that's what I would do. And I started making videos weekly, and I started to gain a small following, and people would be supportive in the comments, starting to work with like very small brands and starting to make money off of it. Again, very small amounts, but I was making money.
Yeah.
Like that's bizarre. Like that at that time, influencers was very new.
Yeah.
So this concept of making money online in this form was very, very new, and the fact that I got to be a part of it in some shape or form was very exciting for me. But I think it started to grow these dreams in my head that I started to obsess over a little bit. So my dream was to be a famous YouTuber, eventually move to LA just like everybody else, and to pursue content creation in that way and to make money off of it. And all I cared about was growing and doing all this online stuff. And I was like pretty like decently good at it, and I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
But my whole life then started to stem around my identity of like, who am I through the lens of YouTube and influencing, if you will, even though they didn't call it that back then, but being an influencer essentially.
Yeah.
And so I started to, not that I ever walked away from what I believed in God, but I started to put that as my identity versus what Jesus says and what God says in the Bible.
So it's kind of like your identity in Christ and just your faith in general was on the back burner a little bit, like not as important.
Like it was important on Sundays, and I still very much believed, but I would say like during the week, like I was just, I wanted this
every day.
And it also came down to it that I'm like, I want my will for my life, not yours.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted my will to be God's will.
Yeah.
But I didn't ever allow myself to think that maybe God's will for my life is not what I want.
Yeah. Okay.
And so that can cause disappointments.
Yeah, it really can. And do you feel like it, in that world of starting to be more of an influencer and do that stuff, it made you more self-focused? Like you were the focus of your thoughts and your actions above everything else?
Oh, for sure. Like it was always about, okay, what kind of content can I make that will get views?
Got it. Yeah.
Again, I was never trying to be clickbaity. It was still from a pure standpoint.
Like you were still going to be true to yourself.
Yeah.
But you wanted to do things that you liked that then would also get views and would get traction.
Yes, because I wanted to grow and then build this career that I thought I wanted for my life. And then I thought this was it was very evident that it was a part of God's will and like storyline for me to be in this space and to be doing this, because my passion for even filmmaking started to grow from this experience. And so I knew I was supposed to be doing this. There was very much what I was supposed to be doing, but I think where I started to get the hiccups and like the little roadblocks was the fact that I wanted this specific outcome, but I didn't want God's outcome. I wanted my outcome from it. And so if there were like things that would, maybe a video didn't blow up, like, oh, I'm kind of sad, like whatever. If I wasn't gaining traction. Like, wow, like how come this channel, like this girl's making content, like her videos honestly aren't as good as mine, but like mine aren't getting the same amount of attention. Like, why am I not progressing faster or in the direction that I wanted? So it kind of started to make me think and grow these feelings of like, maybe I'm just not good enough, which again now is starting to stem from that like earlier identity and thoughts that I had from when I was little, where I'm like, oh, I'm not, like, maybe like people don't want me in their group, they don't think I'm like worthy enough or interesting enough, and so I'm just waiting for people to come to me first, because then that means like, oh, they care enough, so they're opening the door for me. I'm not gonna,
so it's like snowballing
a little bit. It all kind of, you know, everything always comes back. It always does. So I'm now here looking for my identity through this, and this was the thing that was giving me confidence, but I was hiding behind a screen. And so eventually YouTube started to kind of, I still did it, but then Instagram came up. So then I started doing like photos on Instagram, which I loved because it was a little bit easier than making full blown content like videos and just posting photos. But Instagram brought on another challenge, and I would say Instagram I was even more successful on. I started working with more brands and whatnot, and with other influencers. And so now you're getting into the scope of being like, I can present my ideal life on Instagram because it's just a photo. It's just a quick snapshot. One single frame. Video is multiple frames. So it's a little harder to like figure out, even though you can. Like I used to do like a morning routine video. Okay, guys, those morning routine videos, just so you know, are not real. I mean, they are, but they aren't. Like, I'm choosing the best moments of maybe things that can happen of like my week. Okay. Like maybe on Tuesday, I had tea outside with like a book, and then Wednesday I got to do something fun, and then Friday and whatever. And so you just combine it all in like one morning, as if your morning is beautiful like that all the time. So in some shape or form,
I never even thought of that.
Like, you know, we're always showing our best foot forward because no one wants to watch a boring life. And so you're making up these like idealistic like lifestyles, and then with Instagram that became even more prevalent in the space because it's just a picture. Like I can stage the most beautiful location. Like I could literally take a photo and like the creepiest place, but this little corner is cute, so you might think I'm in like some fancy area, and like, you know, your outfits are pre-planned, and you're having a perfect cut like latte, and then all this stuff, your hair's done, like no one sees like your real life. Again, it's not fake necessarily because it is a part of your life, like those moments happen, but they are very much curated.
And
I think that's like something that some people don't realize is that it's very curated. That all just stemmed all the way through high school, and then in high school I actually ended up going online school, and a lot of it came because I really wanted to do more YouTube videos. I wanted to have more time, and I knew that there was like some YouTubers in the space who were doing online school, so I convinced my mom to let me do online. But this is how I did it, guys. I told her that I'd practice piano more. And I mean, in return, I did, because I had lessons more often. It was easier because I wasn't in school during the day, well, like a physical school. So after 9th grade, I went completely online. And so I was pushed further into this bubble, right? So now I'm fully surrounded in a digital world. I'm not learning the skills I need in the outside world of breaking through these feelings of insecurity and fear and whatnot. And that's scary a little bit, because if I was to be ever like going outside, those things would come up. But if I'm like only in my digital space where I'm not talking to people physically ever, I can be confident and I forget
and
that
I
still have those things that I'm not dealing with.
Exactly.
So all of that kind of went through into college. I went to the University of Colorado Boulder, go Buffs. I went to a secular school, so I didn't experience Christian education whatsoever. All my like Christian stuff came from church, essentially, and that's about it. And eventually I was going to an American church, and I would say that in high school is when I started to think, well, like very late high school, early college is when I started to think a little bit more seriously about God, where again, I still believed in him. I would pray. I would try to read my Bible, but barely. Like it'd be like a couple times a year I would try on my own. And beyond church, I really didn't. And so it's like head knowledge. Like I had information about God that I agreed with, but it didn't sit in my heart. Does that make sense? And I think that a lot of people probably can relate to that is just something that happens, unfortunately, when you grow up hearing the same thing, and it can be with different topics where you just kind of get like numb to it. You're like, like I agree, like whatever.
And you almost like stay on the sidelines instead of getting in the game, which is like a silly analogy, but honestly, one of the best things from playing lacrosse in high school is all the analogies to life.
Yeah, and so I didn't play sports, so I think that's why I didn't understand that I was supposed to join the game. I was very much comfortable on the sidelines.
In the game.
No, I like sitting on the bench, okay?
Yeah.
If today I probably would, like if you were to put me in sports, I probably still would sit on the bench.
Which, that's okay. But in the game of life. No,
but in the game of life, I should have been entering, and in moments that I should have, I wasn't. And so this was, and again, and it's interesting though, because my parents were very good examples.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think you should never have the excuse of like, well, my parents didn't show me, or I didn't have good examples. I had great examples. My parents were very much ministry minded. They were very much into like the evangelistic world of like bringing unbelievers to church and discipleship and growing the church and doing ministry outreaches, all of that. They're very much like for the Russian community specifically. Just because that's what they're comfortable with. But like that specifically, I grew up watching. But I don't know, and I don't know if it's I just didn't feel like invited into that space, or I just didn't know like, oh, that's something my parents do. Like I agree,
and
like
I think
cool.
It does come down always to your personal choice. So
yeah, and so I just didn't. I don't know. I just didn't.
Yeah.
That's all I can say is I did not.
Yeah.
And so finally I'm in late high school, and I started going to a very small Baptist church, American, and my cousins happened to go there. So there was some like familiarity there, but I got asked if I would, since I played piano my whole life, I was asked if I would play in the worship team. And my uncle kind of like shimmied his way there and was a little sly and like and like whispered into the pastor's ears and like, oh, Stephanie, like, I mean, Stesha, I'll explain my name in a second. Stesha, she plays piano. You guys should ask her to play. And at first I was very mad at him. I was like, bro, like, I don't want to do this. Why are you like, my whole life, my dad made me play piano for different stuff and different outreaches. And I was like, I don't want to play piano in church. Like, I don't want to do this. But they asked, and I'm also a people pleaser. So when the pastor asks you, you say yes. So that's what I did. And it was definitely a surprise because I actually very much enjoyed it.
Wow.
And so I think this is when I finally started to understand why we serve. And I wasn't doing it because I was trying to glorify myself, but I truly felt like, wow, I have these skills of piano that my parents very blessed that they poured into that and invested into that, and I have them, that the Lord gifted me with them, and that I get to use them to serve him.
Yeah, so it's almost like your first experience truly worshiping with something that you had to offer that was unique, like a gift and a talent.
And it was finally my choice, because growing up I had opportunities where I played piano at our church and different stuff, but it was always from, my dad is making me, I don't want to be here. I just want to be with the kids playing. So this was finally where I think, I don't know, like the Lord probably like, I don't know, it's like a switch flipped, and I realized like, oh, wait, this is something different. And so I'm starting to kind of get more involved in this church, and like I started to play on the worship team in our like little youth band, youth ministry, and like and so I'm doing all these things. I served a little bit with like the 2s and 3s in the morning. So I'm starting to get more and more involved, and I feel like I never was so involved in a church before this church. This was finally like, whoa, like I'm doing this not because someone told me I had to, but because I want to serve and give this to the Lord.
Yeah.
And during this period, I started to really want to take my faith seriously and actually read the Bible. I bought like Bible study books and different like curriculums and whatnot, but there was like this like little, I don't know, like a thorn in my side. Like I couldn't get past, and I couldn't like fully commit. And maybe a lot of it stemmed from my dreams I was trying to pursue. I just didn't have time for it. I wasn't interested enough. I don't know. I just, every time I'd open my Bible, I didn't know where to start. It was like, I don't know what this says. This is confusing. And I'd close it, put it back on a shelf, and it would collect dust for another year.
Yeah.
And it was just like another cycle of that. I'm like, I tried, but I can't do it. Eventually I got to the point where I was praying regularly, and I at least started talking to God, but it still felt like, oh, I have to pray a certain way, like have to have eloquent prayers. And again, all of these misconceptions about God were coming from the fact that I didn't know his word.
Yeah.
And so I had nothing to rely on, and no like no true truth.
Yeah.
And like the Bible verses that were hanging on paintings around my house were not enough, guys. Like I needed to read the word.
Yeah.
Like just because it says whatever verse on like whatever painting in my house, like you really do need to have solid truth by reading the word yourself. So now I'm in this world of going to college, and I get down to the point of it being my second semester of my first year. So my first semester of college, I went to a community college. I got some credits out of the way, but then I quickly transferred to my university because I realized I could not do my degree. I thought I could get away with doing 2 years, community 2 years, at a normal 4-year university. But my specific bachelor's, I got my bachelor's in film production. Ooh. So YouTube did do something. It led me to the path of realizing I wanted to go into film.
Yeah. And
but
you're
I realized
so talented in that.
Thank you. Thank you to the Lord for giving me those talents.
Yeah.
But I realized I couldn't finish and do it in 4 years that way. So I quickly transferred to the university. And it was my first day of class, second semester, but first semester at this university, that I got some not good news about my family, like just some things happening within my family. And just, it seemed like my world that seemed perfect had come crumbling down. So things that I had believed about my family of being like, wow, like we're Christian, so nothing bad ever happens to our family. We're Christian, like the Lord protects us and loves us, like so nothing can ever come in our way.
Yeah.
Which God does love us and he does protect us, but that doesn't mean again that we don't go through trials.
Yeah.
And these trials don't come because God forces them on us. We honestly, frankly, put ourselves into these situations. And that's exactly what happened. So I'm kind of like, okay, I'm in this classroom by myself. Like it's a film class and we're watching some movie and I'm like sitting there and all I can think about is like what's happening at home. Yeah. And I'm like, I can't, I'm like disassociating from like what's happening in the class. So this kind of stemmed into about a year or two long, really deep valley, right? So there was a very deep low for our family and things were happening with my parents and just their relationship. And throughout all of this, I had come to a crossroad. So I was faced with the facts that everything I had believed or assumed was wrong. I had assumed that everything would be roses and daisies and whatnot, but that is not life and that does not happen. And so I had to choose whether I wanted to trust God in it and go on this very, very narrow path that it almost seemed impossible. I'm like, God, I don't know what good can come out of any of this.
And how I can keep trusting you.
Because it seemed like I couldn't. Yeah. Because in my mind, I was like, God, if we love you and follow you, why would you let us go through this? Yeah. I don't understand. Yeah. Because in my mind, it is those who have not enough faith who go through hard times, because the ones who have strong faith, God protects them from them and keeps them from going from hard things. And that was a very hard truth to learn and to
learn that that's not true.
That's not true. Yeah. And unfortunately, it took me from going through a trial to realize that. And then the other path that I could have taken was to be like, God, you are a liar. You do not love us. You're not protecting us. I do not trust you. I'm going to go my own way because I can protect myself better than you can. So and that road is very wide. It's very easy to, because in your mind, you're like, oh yeah, definitely. Like I can, since I
in control,
I can do what I can control. And I am an oldest child. So I think I can control everything. And so I truly believe that I have the control to do stuff and that I am important enough and wise enough to do so. So also not true, but sometimes depending. But I had these two choices. And as I'm like, let's say metaphorically coming up to these crossroads, right? I'm looking at what's happening around me and I'm coming to the chance to decide which way I want to go. God did so many miraculous things throughout that time in our lives and my family's lives, even though it didn't seem like it from afar. Yeah. And it's only looking back that I can see it. But in those moments, it's like so many people surrounded us in prayer. So many people fasted with us. So many people gave financially when we couldn't afford like rent or something. Yeah. So many people stepped up from my family, from my like extended family, from church, like words from other people that maybe you don't hear from often, and just all these things, just the way I saw my mom like respond to the situation, always being on her knees, like I had to like now decide. So I'm seeing all of this around me, and also I felt like I don't know, maybe during that time I didn't really express my feelings too much because I wanted to be like strong or whatever.
Yeah.
But I come to the point and I'm like, okay, I see God, so I'm going to go on this very scary, narrow path. But it seems that that's probably a better option than that, because I stood here, I did nothing. I didn't say anything. I didn't react in any way. And I just kind of like lived through it. And since I didn't do anything and all this like good was coming out of it, I knew that I had to follow God through it, because there's no way that I could have given a better outcome. So I chose that path. Wow. And unfortunately, there are like people in my family who didn't choose that path. And I still believe that God will bring them back like the prodigal son. So yeah, I choose that path. And that I know eventually, after some time, God fully restored that situation. Wow. And so it's like the cherry on top, where you get to see the lowest of lows, but then you get to see the high and the full restoration.
Yeah, and that God brings redemption, restoration.
Yeah. And then after all of that happened, and now that we've, been so many years past this time, and I can see the fruit from it and the way that God worked through that, I realized that it had to be that way, and that there's no way that we could have gotten to this outcome. And I prefer this outcome over anything that could have happened before that I could have ever dreamed of. Yeah. And I realized that we had to go through this in order to get the outcome that was the most desirable. And it's just sometimes you don't realize that the outcome you want is going to have a very, really rough path to get there.
Well, it's like someone told me this in high school once. He was like, "How are diamonds formed?" And I was like, "Oh, I forget." And he was like, "Pressure and intense heat."
Oh, wow.
And he was like, "Just remember that, because when you're under the pressure and the heat, it's like a diamond will form." And when you look at creation, a lot of things go through like hard times before they grow into something beautiful.
Yeah.
A seed has to be buried in the ground in this dirt before
it almost seems like
sprout.
It's gonna, like, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
It's probably gonna die.
So it's cool that you experienced that in that time of your life with your family.
Yeah. And it was a very crucial point in my life, because I think when we go to college, and if you're in college, maybe you feel the same way, or maybe you don't realize this, but that's a very formative time of your life. You will form your very hardcore opinions and feelings about different topics and situations during those 4 years of your life, whether you're in college or not. Like from 18 to 21 is when you, I think, decide on your identity. And if you are like taken in the wrong direction, it can be very hard to get out of that eventually. But this was a very, very formative time. And so thankfully it fully, I think, secured my faith in God. So now I had this very strong faith in him, but I'm still not surrendering my life to God. I went through all of this. I'm closer. Yeah. But I'm not fully surrendered.
So your faith is still like more personal, more real.
It's more personal. It's more real.
But maybe in the area of your like dreams for your future, it's still like Stesha's dream.
It's still Stesha's dream. So Stesha over here still is very much obsessed with Instagram. I think YouTube started to fall on the back burner a little bit. I stopped posting on there just because it wasn't really my dreams anymore as much. So God had changed that. I didn't really care about YouTube as much anymore, but Instagram had become the new hype, the new thing, right? Yeah. And so I am all over that, and I literally like became blonde. Like I dyed my hair blonde because blondes have more fun, as they say. And so
not true.
I think brunettes have more fun. Just kidding. We all have fun.
Yeah, hair color
literally has nothing to do with it. But so I don't know. I just I thought I was cooler if I was blonde. I was prettier if I was if I was blonde. That I would stand out and be more like the typical influencer if I was blonde. So I'd get more followers. Dang. And so I was doing all of this stuff, and I got a little bit more into like designer and nice things. And so now I was like, I have to have like the coolest, best new thing, the best outfits, and all this stuff. So I was still very much going after these things, and at this point, I am like almost more than halfway through college. I'm entering my junior year. And as I'm in the middle of my junior year, COVID happens. Yep. 2020 hits. And that was a very interesting time, as we all know. And so I'm now doing school online, and my parents had decided they want to move to Florida. So I was living in Denver, by the way, if you didn't know where CU Boulder was, that's in Colorado. That's where I'm from the mountains, mountain girly. And so I told them like, listen, guys, I love that for you. I love that for you that you want to go to Florida. Love that. I'm just not going with you. And my parents were like, I mean, okay, that's fine. Like,
you're an adult now.
You're an adult. That's okay. Like, we completely agree. Like, you can live here. And we had worked it out where I was going to live in an apartment. Like, everything was set and seemed to go into place perfectly. And like, it made sense. There was honestly no reason why I wouldn't have stayed in Denver. And so one day, I remember this very clearly. I was going to bed, and I don't think I was sleeping yet, but you know when you're like closing your eyes and you're just thinking, and
yeah.
So I was doing that, and I heard a voice that was not my own. And guys, I don't have schizophrenia or anything. I promise I wasn't hearing voices, but I heard a voice. It sounded like my voice, but it wasn't me.
It was like a thought in your mind.
It was a thought in my mind. Exactly. Like, it's not like I heard an audible voice from the sky. And it was my voice. Like, obviously when you think in your head, you hear yourself.
Yeah.
But I knew it wasn't from me.
Yeah.
And so in that moment, you do really, like, sometimes we do get like thoughts where you're like, oh, that's interesting.
Is that for me?
But like, you have to
the
also
Lord.
discern, like, is it the Lord or is it the enemy placing thoughts in your head? Because there are some times where you might think false things about yourself that you don't necessarily believe, but they just somehow come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And so you do have to always, please always
fact check
to the word.
Check your thoughts.
Pray about it before like listening to those, especially if it's like a word that is life transforming, like I'm about to tell you.
Yeah.
But I just heard this single like phrase, and it just said, go to Florida. That's it. And I was like, what?
Where'd that come from?
I hate Florida. I do not want to be in Florida. And again, go to Florida. And I was like, no. Listen. Listen. I will never have my dead body in Florida. Go to Florida. And it just kept happening over the next couple nights. And, you know, as a curious little gal as I am, I was like, well, let me just like go on Google and just like look some things up. I don't know, look at Florida a little bit. And I guess a really quick side point is that I did live in Florida for 2 years when I was 11 and 12 in Broward County in South Florida. And I absolutely hated it during that time. And I think a lot of it stemmed just from me being pulled away from my friends and family from back home. And so, and also my mom didn't like Florida. So I think I just kind of like assumed her, imitated what she was feeling. And cause, you know, I loved my mom, and I always wanted to be like her. So I was just like, yeah, I hate Florida. And so even though Florida that first time did bring a lot of blessings, like my sister who I had prayed for so many years, I really wanted a sister, guys. I had 2 brothers. That was terrible. I mean, no, love them. But like, come on, like, can I please have a sister? And so after, I was 11 when she was born.
Wow.
And like after trials of like 4 miscarriages and whatnot, like that was truly an answered prayer that I had. And guys, like God answers prayers. Like you might have to remind yourself of all, like, please like sit down today and really think back on your life, all of the answered prayers and remind yourself of them because it's so easy to forget.
Yeah, it's true.
But it was so beautiful. So Florida had beautiful things about it, but I still did not want to go there. I was like, that's awesome. That's great for the people that live there. That's great for you, mom and dad. But like, I don't want to be there. I don't understand. I can visibly see my life. I'm finishing my degree. I have all my friends and family. I'm living my influencer best life over here. Why in the world would I have a church that I love? Why in the world would I get up, pack my bags, fly across the whole country, move to a city that I have no friends in? And mind you, they're moving to a city that I had not even like a cousin in. I had cousins that live in the west coast of Florida, but that's like a 3-hour drive. So we're not even moving to the city they're living in. We're moving somewhere where I have absolutely no roots, no potential job prospects, no church that I want to be a part of because I love my church that I'm at, no friends, no family, nothing. And it to me, I was like, why in the world would I do that? I'm in my prime 20 or about to enter my 20s. There's no way I want to leave right now.
What brought you to that point? What were you fully convinced, or were you just kind of enough convinced?
Well,
to go in faith.
So I started to get curious. And then I had another thought. And again, check your thoughts, because I really don't know if this is from the Lord. I'm like a little convinced it is. It's kind of, because it won't leave me. But like also like I'm not going to say it was, because I don't know if it was.
I know what it is. That's why I'm laughing.
But I had the thought that I was going to meet my future husband in Florida. So I just was like, okay, I'm going. it was like that. It was like a split second. I was like, yeah, bet. Why would I stay away from my husband? Like, how's he gonna find me? I have to move to Florida.
So it was like,
it was very selfish. But so it was like, oh, God is telling me to go to Florida, and I knew it was God. I just knew in that moment that it was Him. It was the Holy Spirit putting that on me.
You didn't know all the whys.
I didn't know the why or the where.
It sounds like one of the whys is like, oh, maybe I'll meet my future husband there.
Well, yeah. So I came up with this why. Again, I don't know. It might be the Lord, might not be, but I felt a passion enough for this that I was like, oh yeah, okay. I will. I literally,
why not?
I didn't even think twice.
And was it during COVID already anyways?
Yeah. So COVID had already started, and I still wasn't sure if I could leave with my degree, like finishing my school. I was not able to transfer because it's such a specific degree. I can't just go anywhere. And I was too far ahead in it that I would lose everything.
Yeah.
So I'd have to start over. So I didn't even know if it was possible, but I don't know. I just always think it's funny that I'm like, really? Like, you were like, God is telling you to go, and you're like, no, I don't know. Your husband's like, yeah, bet. I don't care. I didn't even think twice. I was like, bye guys, I'm moving to Florida. I did not think twice. I didn't care that I was going somewhere. I didn't know what was going to happen. And it was such a leap of faith, but maybe the Lord knew that I needed a little motivation. And I just went full force in faith and went.
Yeah.
And I think that even when I was still a little like apprehensive and a little like I wasn't sure, I still knew enough about God and my experiences with Him and how He has provided and showed up in my family that I knew that I think I deep down knew I was going to say yes at all times. I just needed a little like wiggling,
Yeah.
So I knew I was going to say yes. And what made it a very smooth transition was the fact that I knew who I'm following, and I wasn't following my parents. I was following the Lord.
Yeah.
It just happened that I'd be living in my parents' house.
Yeah.
So it kind of made things a little easier, but
yeah,
I was following God and what He was telling me to do. And that is very hard to do. But I just I'm such like a big faith girl. Like, I think I'm also like the cup is half full kind of girl.
Yeah.
So I trust, I wouldn't say I trust easily. I would say like, I will start a friendship or whatever relationship with trust.
Yeah.
And I will only lose trust if you take it away from me. So
yeah.
I'm not the type that you have to earn my trust. I will normally give it to you right away. And so I'm like a huge, like, I have strong faith. So I just, and everything that I had witnessed so
like
far.
A core value of yours.
There was, in my mind, I was like, I've seen God do even crazier things. So I was not worried at all that He wasn't going to do something here. I just didn't know what. And that is something I'm scared of, is the unknown.
Yeah.
I don't like not knowing what to expect.
Yeah.
But I went ahead and I moved there to Florida. And I honestly now am at a new all-time low because I know I'm supposed to be here, but I don't know what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
And it wasn't very clear at first.
Yeah.
I'm on TikTok and I see a video, either it was an ad or like a video clip from a show called The Chosen. And I think this is the most cringiest thing ever. I don't know why. Like, oh, I was watching The Chosen. Like, mind you, I do like The Chosen a lot, but I saw this thing and I felt convicted because I was watching The Chosen and I felt very convicted.
What is The Chosen? So that.
Oh yeah. So by the way, I like the show. I don't know. Have you watched it, Sammy?
I've only watched the first 2 seasons and I'm bad at keeping up with shows in general.
Yeah.
So it wasn't anything about The Chosen. It's just me.
So The Chosen is just like a reenactment of Jesus's life, essentially, like starting though from when he starts his ministry. So not anything of like his birth or when he's little, but from when he like gets his disciples, and then that's kind of the synopsis or whatever of the show.
Yeah.
And so I'm watching it, but I wasn't convicted because I know there's people have different opinions about like, oh, is it accurate? Can we watch this as a Christian? Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like a film person, so I love like shows and movies. So I didn't ever view it as that perspective. But what I did get convicted about was that I'm watching a show about Jesus and about the Bible, and I didn't know what the Bible said myself. So I felt like, wow, I grew up a Christian my whole life. Yeah, I have never actually fully read the Bible myself.
Yeah.
I've only ever heard it from other people, heard it read at Bible studies or at church, maybe read it myself here and there, bits and pieces.
Yeah.
But the whole Bible as a whole, I have not actually read myself. And so I felt very convicted by this. And I was like, I cannot do that anymore. If I have to choose now, either I want to go all in, but you can't keep living lukewarm.
Yeah.
And I don't want to have one foot in the door and one foot out.
Yeah.
I was just not okay with that anymore at this point, and maybe that's what I needed to realize that. And so I got my Bible, and I had a study. It's like a year in the Bible study type book that like guides you through it. And I had it for many years, but I never actually had done it. And I picked it up and I was like, okay, I'm starting this. And so I started, and I went through the whole Bible in 9 months.
Wow.
Thankfully, because
That's
of
incredible.
COVID, because I had all the time in my hands. But
I also remember I did intense Bible studies during COVID. I had nothing else.
I had literally nothing else to do. And
It was
I think
good.
it was a blessing in disguise, because
Yeah.
I know COVID was a very hard season for all of us.
Yeah.
And there was many, many very terrible things about it, but there were also very good things. And I think God just knew that the whole world just needed to stop. We just needed to pause. We were running after the wrong things. And a lot of us younger generations were taught just to go for your dreams, go do this, that we're ignoring all the important things and ignoring what God has to say. And so God literally stopped us, so that I don't know if he stopped anybody else, but he definitely stopped me. And so having that space where I truly had all the time of the world, I honestly had no more excuses anymore.
Yeah.
There was no friends going out with that I had the excuse that I was like, oh, but I don't have time. I had time. So much time. Honestly, too much time. So I think it was a blessing in disguise. And I don't know if it was for anyone else who needed this, but I definitely needed this. And that time was truly what the Lord needed for me to realize how much I needed him. And I had not realized that before. And just getting to read his word truly transformed my life. Like I never realized how alive God's word is before I started, I first started reading it, and it was like, okay, whatever, it's just words on a page. But the more and more I started reading it, the more and more the words jumped off the page and truly just like impacted my life so deeply. There's no way that this is like just words on a page written 2,000 years ago. This is God's living like words coming out of his mouth himself. So it was really cool to have that experience, honestly.
Yeah. What would you say getting to read scripture and have it come alive to you like did for your faith?
I realized in getting to read like the backgrounds of the scriptures, like where they were written, for who they were written, I realized the Bible wasn't written to me directly. Like it was not written for Stesha, like literally saying like the writers of the various writers of all the scriptures, like they weren't writing with me in their mind, right? Like I didn't even exist. None of us did.
Yeah.
And so the thought of me didn't even exist. So it was not written directly to me. So sometimes you think like, well, how does it impact my life today? So specifically in a time and world that is so different from back then, so different. But the fact that it still was very much for me, like it still impacted me so much, was like, there's no way that this scripture was written 2,000 years ago, and it literally is talking about the exact situation I'm going through right now.
Yeah.
And so all of those things combined made me realize like, wow, like God's word is alive, and that just fully strengthened my faith in the Lord. But also it gave me, Sammy kind of talked about this in her episode in her testimony, but the armor of God. And so I now had this, when before I was literally walking around in nothing. And I had nothing to protect my heart, nothing to protect my head, my soul, nothing. And so now I'm starting to build on this armor and add to my armor, and I was more and more secure and more protected. And it started to also change my perspective on things. And the more and more I got closer to God, the more I realized like I need community, and I sought that out. I found community in a local church, and when I walked into the church, I didn't realize how much I was like lacking in that. Just because of like the past, I had felt unseen, but here I felt seen. And it wasn't because people specifically said or did anything that made me feel that way, but I truly felt God's love by the way that people just interacted with each other. And it fully like pushed me into this, like, I want to be with all of these people. I want to serve with them. I want to be in ministry with them. And I truly go all in, honestly. And it's like a lot of the work has to come from us as well. Like I can't just rely on God to do it all for me, because I have a play in this as well. So I started getting involved in community, and with me being more in the word and just other people lifting me up. And I just felt so invited in to this like story into other people's lives that I started to think differently about the lies that I had once believed. If I felt like I didn't belong, I had a sense of belonging now.
Yeah.
If I didn't have a purpose, or my purpose was in the wrong place, I now knew where my purpose lied. I now knew that I was wanted. And if before I felt like I wasn't good enough, that was not true, because God is what makes me good enough, not anything that I could ever do. And it was just such a eye-opening experience, something that I had never felt before. And I'm so grateful for it. And along this crazy ride of my life, if you will, there was one verse that really stuck out to me, and it was Romans 12:12, and I literally have it like it's on my phone case. If you ever buy something from Elevated Faith, that's where I got it. It's really cool. It has literally Romans 12:12 on it, but it's be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, and faithful in prayer.
That's so
and I think those three things are the things that have brought me through all the hard times, all the good times. Being joyful in hope. I'm generally a very like the glass is half full kind of person. So I have a lot of hope for things, like hope that things will get better.
Yeah.
And so just
Optimistic.
very optimistic. So
me too.
Finding like the joy in things and having hope, it all has to be rooted in Christ. Like I can't root that in anything that is not eternal, because then it's that means that my joy and hope and stuff is not eternal. So it has to have a secure root, and that is Jesus. And just through all the times of affliction that I've come across in my life, and being patient in that has been key, so key. But if there's one thing that you'll learn, is that you cannot be patient on your own. It does come from trials. Like you don't wake up patient. And so unfortunately, I made the prayer asking God for patience. And he really, really tested my patience by putting me in situations that I had to grow and learn to be patient. And so just being patient in those afflictions, I think, is so key, because I always think about this, and it's like, what if the one time that I decide to stop and just quit, I was literally one step of turning the corner to all the blessings and things that God had for me in my life. There's like so many times where people quit like right before like the thing that they were running through all of this like affliction and suffering and hard trials through, and then they quit right before at the finish line. So being patient, I think, is like one of the things I've learned in my life, because if God is in this race with you, then it's worth it. And he's not like a God that, like, God does not stand at the end of the finish line waving at you like, come on, honey, you've got this, you can get here. Because you're like, I'm struggling, but I have no water. I'm running out of breath. There's sweat running down my face. I'm honestly like so weak, I cannot make it. No, God, like Jesus is the kind of God who he is literally right there beside you, running this race. He is putting water in your mouth. He's wiping the sweat off your forehead. He's holding you up when you're literally falling to the ground and can't walk anymore. And he gets to that finish line with you. So that's kind of what I've learned in my life, and just being faithful in prayer through all of it.
And would you say that what you were running towards changed a little bit?
Oh, 100%. And it's like, I was running towards the things I thought I wanted, and the things that the world had to offer, and approval, and purpose that the world could get me, whether it was doing social media or living in LA or doing all this content stuff, which in itself, like, none of those things were bad. Like, living in LA is not bad. Like, doing social media is not bad. But the purpose and the reasons and like the things that I was putting onto them, that's what was bad. The identity that I had rooted into it. And I think it's crazy, because the path that God took me on, and like where I'm at today, and like the dream that I'm answer prayer that I'm living in today, is not like inherently, like, it's not necessarily different from what I wanted. Like, the root is still there. I still wanted to do social media or content creation or something creative of
use your skills in that area.
That's what I've always wanted to do. I just didn't realize that God's will was like, okay, yes, but not there. And I did not know that at the time. And I'm so glad that I stuck it through. And even though I was like, I don't understand, like, God, you're asking me to do these things, but you're saying no. And he's like, no, I'm asking you to do those things, just not there. And so now I get to serve him using my talents and my skills. And whether it is like literally like Bible verses on Instagram, or content that's not necessarily related to him, but still glorify him, because he's given me those skills, and I use them in all the strength that I have that he's given me to my best ability to praise him by doing the best that I can and making things look beautiful because he's the one who made them beautiful.
And what's changed there is that your heart posture is different.
Yes.
It's like for him and with him now instead of for yourself and like with the world.
Exactly.
And that's like the best part of doing life with Jesus is that, yes, he gives you skills and dreams and talents, and he wants you to do them with him. And it's cool because, like you said, it's not like thinking of wanting to move to LA was a bad thing, but you were focused on a more self-focused dream.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, the dream that I have for you is better, first of all.
So much better, guys. So much better.
And what you're really seeking is just like purpose and belonging. And you will find that when you first put it in me, when you first find it in me. And then I'm going to show you how to live the abundant life I died to give you.
Yeah.
And that abundant life is like getting to do all the things he made you to do, but for him and with him.
And I'm honestly so honored that I get to even live my purpose in this way.
Yeah.
Like it's so cool. But I do have like a little funny story about my name that I kind of mentioned earlier. And I think it's kind of like a metaphor for my life a little bit. So I'm going to share with you guys. But I mentioned earlier that my actual name is Stephanie, not Stesha. So I'm not lying to you guys. I do go by Stesha now, but kind of how that came about is I just had some friends who asked if I had a nickname. I was like, well, I mean, my Russian family and friends call me Stesha, but that's not very common in English in general or in America. So I never really gave that option to people, but I was like, you know what? Sure, call me Stesha if you want. And it caught on and eventually came to the point where everyone called me Stesha, so I just started introducing myself as Stesha. So now my whole personality is Stesha.
My whole personality is Stesha. Was it when you moved here more or before that?
Yeah, once I was like heavily involved in our church and just people at church were just like, we're gonna call you Stesha. I'm like, okay. And like, I mean, in Colorado, my Russian friends and family call me Stesha.
Got it. Because it's the Russian form.
Yeah, it's like a Russian nickname for Stephanie.
Okay.
But what I think is interesting about that in like the name change is I think that the shift in my name happened around the time where my shift in my identity with the Lord happened.
Wow, yeah, that's so cool.
So I almost like think about it as Stephanie was the girl who was shy, insecure, who felt like she wasn't wanted. She wasn't good enough and had all these lies attached to her. And guys, mind you, I do very much love my name. Like, I think it's beautiful. My parents gave it to me. Like, I have nothing against Stephanie and I love all Stephanies. But the person you were. But I'm just kind of thinking out loud, like the person I was then, right? Stephanie. And now Stesha, she is confident. She's not worried about what people think, like negatively. Her identity is rooted in the Lord. She is walking in his will for her life. Yeah. And chasing after all of the things and gets her strength from him alone and her identity from him alone. So it's kind of like this like comparison of who I was before and after Christ. Yeah. And so I kind of sometimes relate that to it. But again, I love my name, Stephanie. But it's kind of like how like Paul, he went from Saul to Paul. Yeah. Or like Simon to Peter, you know? It was like their life almost like before Christ and then after. Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing, Stesha.
Thank you, Samantha.
Yeah, that's my full name if no one could guess.
Hey, you never know. Some people go by, like, their full name is the shortened name.
Yeah. Some people have asked me if, like, my name is short for something, and I'm like, yeah, Samantha. But, you know, anyways, I love that we both get to live these lives for Jesus now and do it together, and I think it's so inspiring to see how God, like, grew you and showed you that he is like more than enough and he is everything you ever wanted and more, and the life that he has for you to live is the best life to live. And I think that's like such a good story for everyone to hear and to be encouraged by. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you. I'm so glad I got to share today. But we would love to hear your story. So if you want to comment like your testimony and share with everyone else, just because we are so passionate about sharing your story, no matter how big or small it is. And if that's something you feel led to do, we'd love to read them, and I'm sure other people would too. But that's it for this week's episode. We can't wait for next week, and we will see you then.
Thanks for tuning in. Bye.
Bye.